Ever wish those everyday English conversations could just, flow, not feel like you're constantly being tested or something?
Yeah, absolutely. Like just feeling comfortable and natural, right?
Exactly, and that's what we're digging into today. How to make those daily chats in English feel effortless. We're pulling insights from pasted text, which really focuses on mastering those everyday conversations, making them last at least 5 minutes without it feeling like a chore. So where do we even begin with that? What's the key to making it feel, well, easy?
I think a big part of it is shifting your focus a bit. Like instead of getting hung up on perfect grammar or trying to sound like a textbook, it's more about really connecting and understanding the other person.
That makes sense. So it's less about the mechanics of the language and more about the actual communication part.
Right. And what's interesting, and Piece of Text kind of highlights this with their whole 5-minute thing, is that when you ease up on that mental pressure, especially early on, it can totally change the whole feel of a conversation.
Because those first few minutes can be the toughest, right? Like you're trying to get a feel for the person, figure out what to talk about. It's almost like that initial hurdle to clear.
Exactly. And the source seems to suggest that if you can navigate that initial phase comfortably, get through those first 5 minutes without feeling awkward or strained, the rest kind of flows more naturally.
So, building on that 5 minute idea, what are some things someone can do right away to make those opening moments feel less pressured? Like concrete steps they can take?
Well, one really powerful tool is active listening. That goes beyond just hearing the words, especially in English. Pay attention to things like intonation, how someone's voice rises and falls. And there's little cues that can tell you what they really mean, even if their English isn't perfect.
Because sometimes what someone says and what they mean can be two different things, right?
Totally. And when you're actively listening on that deeper level, it allows you to respond in a way that's more natural and genuine. It takes some of that mental strain off because you're not constantly trying to translate everything perfectly in your head.
That's a really good point. It's not just about the vocabulary you have, but how well you're actually tuning in and picking up on those nuances. And thinking specifically about those first 5 minutes the source mentions, how does active listening, in that deeper way you describe, help someone get through that initial phase more smoothly?
Well, it allows you to find common ground faster. By truly understanding what the other person is saying and, more importantly, what they mean, you can ask more relevant follow-up questions. And that shows genuine interest, which is huge. It takes the pressure off you to constantly be coming up with new topics and creates a more natural back and forth.
So instead of worrying about what you're going to say next, you're actually listening and letting the conversation guide itself.
Exactly. And what's interesting is that when you show that genuine curiosity, it often makes the other person feel more comfortable, too. It's like a two-way street.
Right. You're making it easier for yourself by focusing outward, and that in turn makes the whole interaction smoother. I think a lot of people, especially when they're trying to speak English, worry about those awkward silences. Like, what happens if the conversation just drops?
Yeah, that's a common fear. But when you're actively listening, you're much more likely to pick up on those little cues that someone wants to keep talking or has more to say. You can then use follow-up questions to encourage them, which naturally fills those potential silences. And it doesn't feel forced because it's coming from a place of genuine interest.
So instead of panicking about the silence, you're actually using it as an opportunity to listen even more closely.
Precisely. It's all about reframing that moment.
It seems like the core of this whole deep dive, drawing from pasted text and everything we've been talking about, is really about shifting your mindset. Like making those everyday English conversations feel less like a performance and more like a genuine connection.
Exactly. It's about moving away from that focus on perfect output and towards more engaged input. The more you prioritize understanding and connecting with the other person, the more comfortable and confident you'll become in your own English skills. And that's where that feeling of effortlessness really comes from.
It's like you're not trying to prove anything, you're just trying to have a conversation. So if you're listening and thinking about your next English conversation, maybe consider this. What's one small thing you can consciously focus on to make that interaction feel a little more natural and enjoyable? Could be something as simple as really tuning into the other person's intonation or asking one extra follow-up question.
Something small but impactful.
Exactly. Because that small shift, practiced consistently, it can make a huge difference. It's a real step toward mastering those everyday English conversations and making them feel truly effortless.